All right, first let's take a look at the players that I'm high on in week 3. It's the bullish. All right, the first player on my bullish list this week, Detroit Lions quarterback Jared Goff. Goff had an outstanding week 2, throwing for 5 touchdown passes and looking more like the Goff we've gotten used to over the last couple years. And in week 3, they have a Monday night matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, and a Ravens defense that's given up the second most passing yards and second most passing plays over 20 yards through the first 2 weeks of the season. Now, Lamar on the Ravens offense is averaging 40 points a game, so I expect the Lions and Goff to come out and sling the rock. The next player on my bullish list this week, Seattle Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold. Now, Darnold hasn't gotten off to the hot start like he did last year, ranking middle of the pack in passing yards through the first 2 weeks. But luckily enough for him, he gets to face a Saints defense in week 3 at home that's allowed opposing quarterbacks to complete almost 70% of their passes, and they've allowed the second most passing touchdown through the first 2 weeks of the season. All right, the next player on my bullish list this week, Dallas Cowboys running back Javonte Williams. Now, Williams has been great for the Cowboys since coming over from the Broncos, and he currently ranks 7th in the league in rushing yards, and he's tied for the league lead with 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. And if he continues at his current pace of 5 targets per game, he'd finish the season with a career high. And his reward this week is to face a Bears defense that's been bottom 5 in most rushing statistics through the first 2 weeks. So I see no reason to think Williams' hot start stops this week. The next player on my bullish list this week, Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor. Now, through 2 weeks, Taylor's looked like his old self, with 313 total yards and a 5.5 yards per carry average. And just about the only thing fantasy GMs could ask is that he gets a rushing touchdown, as his only touchdown this season's come via the pass. But I have good news, fantasy GMs. I think this is the week that Taylor gets that rushing touchdown against a Titans defense that ranks 4th worst against the rush. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more than 1. The next player on my bullish list this week, Seattle Seahawks wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Now, Smith-Njigba currently ranks 1st in the NFL with a crazy 44.2 target share percentage, which means almost half the passes the Seahawks throw are going his way. And that's a big reason why he's 2nd in receiving yards through 2 weeks. And despite that volume and topping 100 yards in both weeks 1 and 2, he has yet to find the end zone. But I expect that to change this week against a Saints defense that's given up the 2nd most passing touchdowns through 2 weeks with 5. All right, the next player on my bullish list this week, New Orleans Saints tight end Juwan Johnson. Now, Johnson currently leads the Saints in almost every major receiving category through 2 weeks. He's averaging 10 targets a game, and his 26.7 target share percentage is 3rd best in the league for tight ends. And this week he faces a Seahawks team that's given up the most fantasy points to the tight end position through 2 weeks. And I think Johnson's strong start continues this week. All right, the last player on my bullish list this week, Las Vegas Raiders tight end Brock Bowers. Now, Bowers picked up right where he left off last season as one of the top fantasy tight ends. And with Geno Smith racing to see how quickly he can throw double-digit interceptions, and the Raiders' rushing game stuck in the mud, Bowers is going to have to continue to be a star for this offense. And this week he faces a Commanders team that's given up 3rd most receiving yards to the tight end position through the first 2 weeks. And if the Raiders want any chance to win this game, they're going to have to feed Bowers, so make sure he's in your lineup.